We'd like to welcome everyone to SAS Global Forum 2021 and our virtual presentation. We look forward to presenting to you all today about how our customers are using data looking to stay ahead of the competition through modernization and digital transformation. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Ben Zenek. I'm the CTO of Zencos Consulting. We're an analytical consulting company and SaaS partner. We've been building innovative solutions for our customers since 2001, providing them with actionable insights in the realm of analytics and evolving them and modernizing them to digital transformation initiatives. I'm here today with my co-presenter, Chris Bell. He's the Development Director of the Collaborative Work Environment, or CWE. Welcome, Chris, and please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Ben. Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Bell. I'm with the Collaborative Work Environment. The CWE is a technology and advisory services company focused on improving the way teams, systems, and data interact. CWE was formed in 2006 and has supported many large-scale cost reduction programs through virtual collaboration suites and executive performance reporting.
So today, in today's presentation, as shown on the agenda, we want to walk you guys through how digital transformation and SAS Viya, leveraging cloud analytics, can help you as an organization achieve quicker time to value by providing insights into your technical operations, as Chris will discuss later, and enable you to expose measurable cost reduction opportunities using these various technologies. We're going to be digging into some case studies around the various industry challenges that we see out there and what the platform OneView is that we've developed in collaboration with CWE is leveraged for in terms of addressing those industry and business and technical challenges that exist out there, as well as dig into a little bit about how digital transformation in the cloud play an active role in innovation for organizations as it relates to modernizing their capabilities and keeping up with the inherent pressures that exist today for innovating new products and releasing them to their customers and to the market. So let's kind of jump in then, and we're going to start off by briefly discussing the benefits of digital transformation in the cloud. So one of the basic things, just when you start talking about digital transformation, it can be an overwhelming topic. It's a very hot topic, but something to keep in mind, digital transformation is not new. It's been around forever. People have been doing this forever. However, in most cases with organizations, it is a new way of thinking. And so let's kind of talk through one of the, I guess, what I'd call greatest success stories of digital transformation. I'm going to go all the way back 20 plus years now to the music industry. There was a lot of pressure on the music industry to change and adapt. This pressure wasn't something that they initiated, but it was driven by various grassroots technology disruptors, let's call them. Those disruptors, had different approaches for how they could essentially share music, right, and kind of go around the standard ways of purchasing music. I think one of the observations I would have as I've watched the music industry and other industries transform, and even individual companies transform digitally, is today it's even more important. With the pandemic and everything going on in the world, you can't slow down as an organization either. What we're doing with CWE and other customers is we're using concepts of digital transformation. We're using learnings from organizations in the past to not only help our customers innovate and come up with new ways of reaching their customers, but also using the cloud to assist them by reducing some of that traditional infrastructure impediments that existed and allow analytical users essentially to do more than less. So let's, before we get into the use cases, and I hand this over to Chris, I'd like to explore a little bit more about how organizations can change and move towards more opportunities to leverage digital transformation and use that in terms of the support of cloud capabilities. So let's proceed here and let's talk a little bit about some cloud capabilities and how you can better embrace the cloud. And so our 5 pillars are going to be built around operational excellence, security, reliability, performance efficiency, and one that everybody likes, especially in the times of uncertainty and the pandemic, cost optimization. And so I'm going to go ahead and just briefly discuss each of these. This is, a key to a successful digital transformation program, regardless if it's the cloud or not, is operational excellence. So for us, we think about operational excellence as automated provisioning and using things like infrastructure as code to do that automated provisioning. Why? Because that allows our engineers to use their background to develop programs, in some sense reducing the human intervention, which in turn reduces the risk of issues or errors within your deployments, especially as you start talking about, and which we will in a minute, security and protecting your data. And so we're trying to reduce that manual intervention and error-prone processes through automation. One of the key factors to this, and I think one of the most important things that when people start these initiatives you have to keep in mind, is you can go and automate as much as you want, but you really need to have that organizational buy-in at all levels in order to start this type of a process. The important part of that is that it is going to allow you to do things quicker, but you also need to be able to accommodate within your organization change management so you can be continually improving your processes around this automation. It's not a one and done thing. It is a continual improvement process that you're trying to implement. And you're going to learn more as you go through that process. But to successfully and consistently be able to move things into a cloud environment, I think that this is one of the biggest imperatives, and that's that automated provisioning that's associated to that operational excellence. I think the next one is sort of a combination of activities, which is for us reliability. If you as an organization can't rely on what's being put in place, you may have more comfort in your more traditional on-prem implementations because you can touch it. You can feel that type of implementation. The cloud you don't touch, right? Everything is sort of done for you through processes. So your ability to monitor and establish KPIs related to the reliability of the system is paramount. You have to be able to do it. You have to be able to get notifications and track those KPIs and information about your environment that you would typically have, a team of people doing, and having the ability to have touch points on those systems. And so monitoring from a reliability perspective, as well as building out and automating and continuing to innovate even on your automation provisioning, how you interface with your applications is important from a reliability perspective. The more you can put in place in terms of controls, the more reliable your environment will be. In turn, going into the third pillar, the more secure you can establish that environment as. I think security, to me, anytime you talk about cloud and cloud analytics and data transformation, it becomes probably the hottest topic or the most important topic. This security topic is important because people are afraid. There's this fear of, I'm going to put my data in the cloud. What does that mean? Well, traditionally, it's not that much different than putting your data in a data center somewhere, except for, as I mentioned, you can touch that part of the data center, and it's not shared infrastructure. Although you can have private areas within the cloud, it still is built on top of the concept of a shared responsibility, shared infrastructure model. One thing I'll say is it doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be a concern. You can implement various automated provisioning capabilities, but also alerting capabilities and security capabilities within the cloud at a very granular level to alleviate this concern. Whether that's leveraging things like least privilege, leveraging various cloud capabilities that allow you to monitor common vulnerabilities, network reachability, periodic application reviews, vulnerability scans. We've built into the CWE framework automation of all of that on a recurring basis, and then automation of the change management around it, which is just as important as security. So I think if you think about this concern around data security, data privacy, as you look at the cloud, that can be alleviated by taking your approach in incremental changes and using a solid agile change management process to do that, which in turn will allow you to achieve that organizational buy-in. In terms of the other two pillars that we talked about, related to performance in particular and cost optimization, these are just value added benefits you get by having things in the cloud, which when I talk about performance, I'm not necessarily only talking about how fast something runs, how efficient something runs. I'm also talking about availability and reliability of your systems and of your environment. So in order to, really take advantage of the cloud and transform from something that's not as cloud or digitally focused, you can start moving into the cloud and gain flexibility and scalability without having to have that investment in, the process and the time to acquire new resources if you're talking or looking more in line with, the typical standard on-prem type model. And so you get that flexibility not only to quickly acquire resources, but you also have that flexibility to change resources and change them in a scalable way while allowing that to go up and down. And that kind of leads into that cost optimization piece. These processes are going to be driven by, the type of updates, when updates are needed, and you can auto scale these processes. However, you still want to put controls in place to do so, because if not, your costs can go out of control. And so using the cloud, yes, you're scaling your architecture, but you're also not having to scale it to the highest watermark. You're able to adjust how that scaling occurs and evaluate where you want to be as an organization and let some of these cloud features and capabilities manage how you manage your cost and how you manage the budgets that you apply to it. So all 5 of these pillars are important, and we're going to touch on them a little bit as we go through the remaining part of the presentation today, as we look at how we address the case study that Chris is going to talk about in a moment. But I think, following the pillars, what this allows us to do and what digital transformation and moving to the cloud allows you to do, in particular, when you look at these analytics platforms like Viya and using SAS Viya analytics, as instead of just a platform, but as infrastructure as code, it allows us to solve various industry challenges in a much more efficient and effective manner. I'm going to now hand it over to Chris so we can take a look at not only the case study, but why are we working with CWE, and what kind of both industry and business challenges are we trying to solve using SAS in support of digital transformation and cloud analytics. So Chris, how about you start and kind of talk about the industry challenges?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I'll start by framing the industry and the service categories. Our team focuses in the technical operations, which we classify into 3 broad service categories: facilities and engineering, hospitality services, and business support services. These 3 broad categories typically make up 25% of an organization's total operating expense and include nearly 5,000 discrete base service lines. To give you an idea of how this would matrix down, let's take, for example, the hospitality services, which is the service category. Underneath hospitality services is a primary service line of food services, which breaks down into a subordinate service line of cafeteria services. Underneath cafeteria services, you'll find many base service lines, one of those being vending machines. So that same perspective is how we look at this technical operation consistent into these 3 categories. Large organizations who operate their core businesses in complex buildings like manufacturing plants, health systems and hospitals and institutions, and those who have acquired millions of square feet of space across large geographical areas are the ones struggling the most with this challenge. What we see is that there are about 15 to 20 primary applications that help support these service lines, the systems that you see in the middle of this graphic. And we're going to look at this challenge really in 3 viewpoints: the data, the systems which house the functionality, and then the teams in which they support. So first, starting with the data challenges, as we look to the technical operations and the sophistication and complexity that's required, there are hundreds of discrete systems, assets, applications, and vendors that help support this space. Many of the software applications are supplier or vendor hosted. They're maintained in the organization's departmental silos, and they're rarely analyzed holistically. So to paint a picture here of some of the data challenges, many of these systems have facility lists within them. And as you look maybe at the real estate facilities list, which could be the single source of truth, and then you look at the facility listings and maybe the computerized maintenance management system or the financial systems, those are rarely consistent. So it's hard to then start to correlate the data streams from the other data sources to start to get a holistic view or perspective into your operations. So there's a variety of challenges that the data creates, but as you look to establishing spend baselines and creating and complying to standards and leveraging best practices across departments and locations and business units, it just becomes problematic. The second view in which we're going to look at is the systems challenges. So many of these systems are legacy applications, especially as you look to the facility systems. Each one has different communication protocols. They're typically built on different database structures. So understanding these components is really a large coordination effort with the vendors themselves, but it's a critical component as we look at the strategy of OneView. And the second thing around systems is some of the limitations, really from an integration perspective. But as we look at now sharing this information with the systems and up into a centralized analytics solution, it's about what are the integration capabilities that each system offers, what are some of the data sharing limitations, and how can we begin to understand that so we can build an optimal integration architecture through the strategy. The last point around the challenge I'll make is around the team. So we're all familiar with the departments and IT and facilities and construction management. These teams typically focus into their departmental systems, and any analytics they're doing is pretty singularly focused on those systems themselves. What you lack in this technical operations are advanced analytics teams, because they typically focus on the revenue generating activity, which creates a gap of analytical capabilities and skill sets in this space. So what we're trying to do is start to get this data from being quite disparate and segmented, rolled up and into a standard place so we can begin to model multiple of these systems and their data together. So with that being said, I'm going to transition into the strategy. And really what we're doing here is we're combining advisory services, a proven process, and a set of technologies to help identify the software systems and data sources supporting technical operations. We then baseline the raw data and the structure that it's in. That helps us identify any gaps. We then are able to then standardize and map these disparate data sets together, which helps us establish a comprehensive common data model. We do that in a variety of ways, but we assign facility IDs and service line IDs to each of the data sources, which now provides us this common model. As we then look to operationalizing the data sharing or the integrations, we work to meet each data source at its most stable integration capability. So an example of this could be if a system has a published API, we can use that. Or if it has a simple CSV export, we'll capture that information, get it into a centralized inbox, and create some scripts to automate the processing of that data. So from there, with the data model created, we work in an iterative process with departments and executives to create a series of visualizations, really helping them understand their data and look at their operations in a unique way or a different perspective than they've ever seen before. And what this perspective allows them to understand is their operations, their expenses, their delivery models, and the supplier and vendors that support those, which ultimately helps them identify process improvement opportunities, create the justification for those projects, and then track the performance of each discrete change. So with that, I'll turn it back to Ben to speak to the solution.
Great, thanks, Chris. So as Chris mentioned, pulling together things like advisory services, the technology and processes, CW and Zencos have been able to establish these repeatable processes for delivering to the business challenges of our customers. The solution stack, as you can see, integrates various key components, whether it's the data gateway, the software interfacing, or the dashboard and storytelling aspects of the solution. So the data gateway is that component that does the mapping and the API integration to select and pull in data sources from the various customers. It is an exception-based manner which triggers the loads into the system and only triggers loads based on the occurrence of good data, quality data coming in through that gateway. When we pull data in, it then uses that software interface to provide some additional quality checks and additional capabilities, which are going to allow us to build out a standard set of operational capabilities, operational reporting, and automate the loading of the various solution components. So when we break this down a little bit further, we're using the same infrastructure as code concepts we discussed in the 5 pillars, and it allows us to rapidly deploy, acquire, assess, and integrate data for all of the CWE customer base. The infrastructure you see is built out further to support the secure movement of that data, both within and outside of the cloud platform supporting these customers. As much as possible, we're leveraging automation to reduce the reliance on that human intervention we earlier discussed, whether it relates to the data acquisition, consolidation, or loading, which we leverage the least privileged concepts to make sure that the data maintains secure and can be transformed efficiently throughout the entire steps of that cloud process. Our goal is to move that data as little as possible through this model, but make sure that it's being securely transmitted and is stored appropriately as it goes from stage to stage within this environment. The data, as we go through the process, gets viewed within a series of dashboards, and I'm going to hand it over to Chris to discuss, providing the customer with an operational one view, which is the solution name, that I'll let Chris now give you guys a little bit more insight into.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. So with the data now mapped together and visualized in one executive dashboard, we help our organizations now see key performance indicators across their technical operations portfolio. This insight can now be used by the organization's process improvement groups or consultants to identify areas of poor performance or high expense and provides the necessary context to making informed decisions. By tying each data stream to its service line and financial account, it now allows the organizations to track the cost decay or increases in each of these areas and is a key tool for CFOs who require validation on capital and operational expenses and make sure that the budgets are then reduced by the savings realization. So this tool is used by internal teams as well as external teams, and you'll be surprised at how many solid projects you can find by having the right information at your fingertips.
Thanks, Chris. I think in conclusion, digital transformation and cloud can be somewhat overwhelming as organizations evaluate new ways to innovate. However, we don't think it has to be. By following, the set of common principles we've discussed today, implementing operational efficiencies and automation, you and your organization can begin the digital transformation journey to the cloud in a very incremental fashion, which allows you to ensure that the workload that you're moving to the cloud is the right fit for the cloud at the right time. So we would like to thank everybody, and we hope that you've enjoyed the presentation, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.